Deep space. Space that is deep, full of planets and black holes and potentially white holes and different potential life forms that humanity has yet to discover. Are we here for a shortened period of time? Or are we here for much longer than we think? Is theology correct? Or is science correct? Or is it a mix of both? Welcome to the History Out of the Box podcast. My name is Cam.
My name is Jen.
And we're here to talk to you about the wonderfully illustrious, disgusting, shameful
maybe
life of L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah, that might get some, depending on who's watching this, some angry folks. But
How many people are part of that?
Scientology?
Yeah. Do we know?
Well,
do we have accurate numbers?
Back in the day, as in
1974.
No. Let's Google this. How many Scientologists are there today? Because from my understanding, I think the church says a certain number, but everyone outside of the church is like, nah, it's smaller than that.
The church lies.
So as of 2007, they're claiming 3.5 million members in the United States.
Baloney.
But according to a 2008 American Religious Identification Survey, there's 25,000.
Yeah, there's no 3.5, no way.
And that was in 2008. That was before, or wait, when did that South Park episode come out? Because I feel like that was when it got really mainstream about what some of the stuff was.
I can't remember. I don't know the exact date, but
it was around that time, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know,
South
but
Park.
here's the thing. I don't know. Top Gun Maverick was a really good movie.
That
could have been a really good marketing gimmick.
Not everyone in that movie was a Scientologist.
I know, but the chain of command, the number one, the Tom Cruise, who
He's not the head of Scientology.
I know, but he's like this prominent member, right?
Yeah, but
he's used as a marketing
No,
gimmick.
he's like the president of Scientology. He's completely and totally useless, has no power whatsoever, and all the other individuals around them like keep him in check when it comes to Scientology. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe he's Congress.
Well, either way, let me preface this first by saying this is not a podcast specifically about Scientology, all right? If you want to go watch or listen to any of those, there's a bunch. All you got to do is look. They'll go deep dive into all the intricacies of the religion of Scientology.
So I tried to be really techie for this episode, picking some very, very, very spectacular music options. By the way, I need to do this now because we now are going to have a YouTube channel. Episodes will be coming out soon. If you like what you hear, go ahead and give us a follow on Instagram. We're building that up. We're also going to have a YouTube, as I said, so give us a subscribe on YouTube. Additionally, you're welcome to give us suggestions on people that you'd like us to cover, preferably deceased.
No, always deceased. We're not going to try launching some sort of... We're not...
Well, do you want to know why? Because as far as I know, and historians normally say this about us, but we are the only history podcast that connects our listeners with the ghosts of their collective pasts.
Oh,
unfortunately, and that might be an opinion, but unfortunately, L. Ron Hubbard is a ghost of our collective past. But let's go ahead and jump right into his background. I have some wonderful music to play.
Oh, you ready for the diving into the life of the man who founded the Church of Scientology?
This is good music. Here you go.
And his wackadoodle life. This might be a two-parter, so
it will be a
up.
two-parter. This is going to be a two-parter.
Born on March 13th, 1911, Lafayette Ronald Hubbard was born. Welcome to the world, Lafayette. What a name. He would soon be commonly known as L. Ron Hubbard, which was his pen name, or at least the one he was most popular going by. But we'll call him Hubbard throughout the rest of this. He was born in a city called Tilden, Nebraska, to his mother, Ledora May, who was a teacher, and his father was Harry Ross Hubbard, a former Navy officer, and he was an only child.
His name was Lafayette?
Yes, that's
like
what the L
like
stands
the city.
For. Well, yeah, and, you know, Lafayette's like a name. That was a name.
It's a name.
Yes.
So is Apple.
Lafayette from... Oh. Yes, that was his first name. That's what... He went by Ron a lot, I think.
Yeah, Ron. Good old Ron.
Yeah. So soon after birth, young Hubbard was just 2 years old when they relocated to Kalispell, Montana. And let me clarify, before we get into this, when I was doing the notes on this, this man moved more in his life than anyone I've ever heard of, ever.
Yeah, prior to the episode, Jen was having an emotional breakdown. I
was just like, can this man too many notes in one spot for a month?
His life is too storied. Dare I say, maybe the most storied life we have yet to speak about or ever spoken about on this show.
Besides, Michael Jackson was the person we did before this, and he died in 2010. But
weird kind of segue to L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah. I don't know what that went.
Political to historical, which had like a paragraph or two of information because we don't have that much information, to musical or to acting, and then to musical, and now we're at cult leader. Well, religious cult leader.
Hot take. I like it.
Everyone
You're
has
going to have lots of them.
Yeah. This is one. See, I was nice for Michael Jackson because I like Michael. I like Mike. Okay. Mm-hmm. Don't like the little kitty stuff, but I like Mike, right?
But you're not a fan of Lafayette.
I'm not a fan of Hubbard here. Mm-hmm. And I'm opinionated, and I'll have my opinions. No. But let's go ahead and talk about the city of Lafayette.
Well, we're not talking about the city of Lafayette. We're talking...
Of course we're not.
He relocated... Yes, as a 2-year-old, he got up and he relocated himself, with his parents, to Kalispell, Montana. And later, soon after, they were in Helena, which is in Montana as well. And which is ironic, considering we were just in Montana a couple days ago. So, what do you know? We were in his old stomping grounds.
Also ironic that Scientology, as far as I know, I'm not well-versed in this, don't take my word for it, is also non-believers of hell. Ironic.
Again, if you want a Scientology podcast, there's plenty available for you.
I could be wrong.
This is not a Scientology episode. This is all about L. Ron Hubbard and what his life was and what he said his life was. And sometimes those are two very different things. So we'll get into that. But when World War I came around in 1917, his father rejoined the Navy, and his mother took up an occupation as a clerk with the state government of Montana. But now that his father was back in the military, they began to move around even more.
Fun.
And at 13 years old, young Hubbard earned the rank of Eagle Scout in his Boy Scouts troop in Washington, D.C., where they were then living. And this turned out to be a moment of huge pride for him. And I don't know, when you learn more about his life later on, you think, could this be a thing? The specifically the Eagle Scout thing seemed to trigger something.
It's literally a thing for anyone who gets the Eagle Scout. No offense. Fantastic. Really difficult to get. Props is a thing. Brought up at parties. Brought up at weddings.
Scouts?
No.
Really?
I was poor.
I was in Girl Scouts.
I was poor. We didn't do those things. When you're... See, let me explain this. When you're poor, one of two things occurs. Either you do things like that because your family actually wants you to be not poor, which is okay. Not saying my family didn't want that. I'm sure they did. Or, just like little hubby here, you move around so much that it doesn't make any sense to do it. And that's what happened with me. So
I'm sorry you didn't get to experience Boy Scouts.
I don't...
You're like,
I don't have to deal with whatever the shame is today. So that's...
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thankfully, net positive here.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was a moment of pride for him, Eagle Scouts.
Bet it was.
In 1925, he began high school at Union High School in Bremerton and later transferred after moving to Seattle to Queen Anne High School. He has been all over the place. Nebraska, Montana, Washington, D.C., Washington. And that's just what I wrote down, okay? By 1925, his father was stationed in Guam. And Mom and little Hubbard would go visit over the summer and stop by a few foreign ports in China along the way. China.
Well, yeah, that's before the... Yeah, okay, cool.
In the 20s.
Yeah, it's before.
Mid-20s. And Hubbard was a little American teenager in the 1920s, but he was nonetheless very racist and ignorant.
Great. That's wonderful. That's great.
Towards the situation of those in poverty at these ports.
Oh, interesting.
And I know you can say it's a different time, but it doesn't change the fact that it was racist and ignorant.
I mean, the accurate statement is it is a different time, and the also accurate statement is also based on our perception of looking back, racist and ignorant.
Yeah.
Two things can be true at the same time. Interesting that someone who's so well traveled is,
he would go to these
not.
ports with his mom, and he'd look around and he'd see, we're talking about mid 1920s China.
Yeah.
He'd see people like hanging around the ports who were obviously in poverty, and he'd just say they were, he'd call them derogatory names
That's
that I'm
nice.
not going to repeat. And
That's great.
he would say they were lazy and yada, yada, yada. You can imagine.
See, just for note, I think something that needs to be said. There's a reason why the problems that we have today are problems. Because the people that lived years ago made those stupid decisions, and now everyone else is dealing with the mistakes, which is good. We're becoming better. But little Lafayette was a little shithead.
But once they got back stateside, it was time to move again. And Hubbard went to live with his grandparents in Montana while his mom stayed in Guam with his father. And there he entered into Helena High School and began writing for the school paper.
He would be a journalist. Oh my God.
That's where he got his start.
He would be one.
Let's
now it
not
makes
forget,
all sense. It makes this.
L.
It makes
Ron
all the
Hubbard
sense
is
now.
a writer, a prolific writer.
Not every writer is a journalist.
Well,
and not every
that's where
writer
he
supports journalism.
started writing at the school newspaper in Montana. Isn't that interesting? By the end of the school year in 1928, Hubbard failed out of Helena High and left Montana to go be with his parents in Guam. And he spent much of his time that summer in 1928 actually traveling to and from China and Guam, writing short stories and essays. He just loved to write. He tried to follow the path of his father and join the Navy right away, but he failed the entrance exam. Hey, now. Don't you laugh. Oh. Yeah.
He deserved it.
I guess that's true.
Look. We can't give him too much crap because the premise of this whole show is to let people know about people of the past. Now, granted, we're going to speak about some terrible people. I have my opinions, and I might change. Maybe I'll change my opinion. Maybe. But there are some people.
How about this? Here's what I'll give him some credit here, because we are about the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And the whole point is we're trying to say that people
are people.
And
how can it be you and I can get along so awfully?
What? Oh, the song.
Depeche Mode.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I'm old now.
But I will say that I, as someone who likes to write myself, I think it's pretty cool that he started
failed
writing.
out of high school and was racist in China and Guam and failed his Navy entrance exam.
But he was a writer.
I don't know what the requirements were in the 20s for the Navy entrance exam, but I can't imagine. This is
a couple of years later, it was just you got to be 18
you're gonna go.
and
Yeah,
you're just gonna go.
Just gonna go. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, anyway,
Interesting.
Instead, he applied to the preparatory school in Virginia to prepare for another entrance exam into the Navy.
Oh.
And he was entered into it. Swaverly preparatory school in Virginia was where Hubbard
Manassas.
Yes, Manassas. He was diagnosed with myopia there.
What is myopia?
Do you want to know? It's basically myopia. Sorry. Yeah. I don't have it, so I don't know. But it's basically nearsightedness. He couldn't see.
I have myopia.
Yeah, I know you do.
This
hence the glasses.
This comes as news to me. I have myopia. Should I start writing?
You want to go
start a cult?
Found a religion?
Should I found a religion?
Well, that disqualifies you from being admitted into the Navy, at least at the time.
Not anymore.
Yeah, at least at the time. So he would write later, Hubbard, this is his direct words, he wrote about this. Quote, your eyes...
Wait.
Oh, you want to do it?
Your eyes are getting progressively better. They become bad when you use them as an excuse to escape the Naval Academy.
That's what he said.
Basically, he is saying later on that he kind of ramped up the issue on purpose to get out of going into the Navy.
Why prepare by going to a preparatory school in order to go back to the Navy after failing the entrance exam the first time?
Conflicting behaviors.
Was his biographer intoxicated when he reported that?
No.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what he wrote.
Interesting.
But what now, right? Hubbard went off to the Woodward School for Boys in Washington, D.C. And as a student there, you don't have to take the entrance exam to join George Washington University.
Then.
Yeah, then.
You could just walk into a school, be like, I'm here for school, and boom, you're there in school.
It's $20 spent over the next 30 years.
$20 for a
degree.
full class load, for room and board, for free food, for parties, for books, just $20. One time, $20, and you never ever have to pay anything ever again. And then you go on to make massive amounts of wealth in arguably the wealthiest generation of all time. And then you pass away and you make everything terrible for everyone else. It's very easy. Very easy.
Well, he graduated in 1930 and began a university at George Washington University that September of 1930.
That is evidence that anyone, and I mean anyone, can graduate college. Even people who don't finish high school. Even people who fail the Navy entrance exam. Even people who start religions.
The Woodward School for Boys in Washington, D.C. was basically the equivalent of finishing high school. But yes, he at first failed out. Well, Hubbard's choice of study was civil engineering, or at least that was his father's choice. And Hubbard was an extremely poor academic.
You're very nice. You could have just said he was stupid.
Was that the nicer thing to say?
I mean, same difference. Because here's the thing: irresponsible is probably the nicer thing to say. I really don't like this guy, and that is clear. But again, let me be nice to him and all of his.
Try.
What does he become, a Thetan when he?
Yeah, we talk about that
become
later.
Nice to him. I'll be nice to him so his Thetan doesn't haunt me.
He's
Do they
around.
haunt? Do Thetans haunt? Are they
Great
ghosts?
question.
Are Thetans ghosts?
It's a great. We should send this podcast in an email with that question straight to the church.
Dearest Scientology, I have a question for you. Are Thetans ghosts? Also, what is your opinion on Santa Claus? And if L. Ron Hubbard is a Thetan, how many Thetan points does he have currently as a Thetan? Is he the greatest Thetan of all time?
Yes.
Or is he a poor academic Thetan?
He's the best operating Thetan.
Did he also go into the Navy as a Thetan and fail out of the prep
ideally,
exam?
Kind of.
Is there a Navy when you're a Thetan? Or do we not
Yes.
have needs for that? I know that 737s drop the Thetans on.
That's a whole other thing.
Earth.
We're not doing a Scientology podcast.
I'm just saying.
You can't
that's
help yourself.
I know I can't. It's just very imaginative. It's like a macaroni painting of religion. There's a lot that can be, but that one specifically, macaroni painting.
Back to his studies.
So nice. Thanks, little hubby. Thanks for painting that. That's
He
very nice.
was failing atomic physics at the time, which was a peculiar thing because later on in life he would claim to be an expert nuclear physicist.
I mean, he took the class.
Yeah, that's all.
He took the class. Dude, you know what? L. Ron Hubbard's dating profile would have been hilarious. If he created like a Tinder or whatever the other ones, like Bumble or all the, he would be 6 foot. He'd be exactly 6 feet tall. He'd be exactly 6 feet.
Oh.
He would have a nuclear physicist degree. He would have a degree in civil engineering. He would have a master's in astrophysics, and he would be working with NASA.
Probably.
And his quotes would probably be something along the lines of "You only live once." He strikes me as a port drinker.
Ugh.
He likes port. He drinks port regularly, not with like a steak or like a really nice dessert. He drinks port like it's water.
Ugh. It's disgusting. He's like got a croissant in the morning with a thing of port.
The croissant is a chocolate croissant
Of course.
with a port in the morning.
But it's not like an authentic French cafe
No.
chocolate croissant. No. We're talking
Vons.
like Vons.
Vons. Nothing wrong with Vons croissants, but Vons.
Vaughn's Bakery,
Or-
3 days old,
Yeah.
1 day,
Like
past expiration date.
He saw it.
Croissants.
Like he would go to the store and he saw it on like the this is old area where they have some of the stuff that's cheaper. Great thing to do, especially with like some meats too, because meat technically you can get away with it. But like he saw the croissants there, got the croissants, got the bagels, didn't have any of the bagels. But he's also one of those. He's a specific the spread of like the stuff he puts on his bagel.
The cream cheese.
It's cinnamon on an
on like a
raisin.
No.
On an everything bagel. Ugh. He's the cinnamon cream guy. Now cinnamon cream on a raisin bagel is not bad. That's like or blueberry. Well, it's actually
That's actually really good.
Very good.
Einstein
But
bagels sound so good right now.
It's
Blueberry
9
cream
o'clock
cheese.
at night.
We're talking about croissants and
I'm
bagels.
describing L. Ron Hubbard right now. Okay, he would go.
An everything bagel with cinnamon cream cheese on
He
it.
would go to Outback Steakhouse. Wouldn't look at the menu. Order a tomahawk.
Oh.
Not even on the menu.
Yeah, okay.
He would ask for it well done.
Oh, yeah, he's not a medium rare.
Not a medium rare guy.
No.
He's not a rare guy.
We do well
not a
done
blue guy.
steaks only.
Yeah.
No sauce or anything
And
added.
then if
Just
the
dry
waiter
steak.
or waitress is anything but Aryan, worst experience ever.
Yikes.
1-star review.
All right, moving along.
Great imagery for this guy.
Oh my
We like to cover the good, the bad, and the ugly.
No bias here. So, again, atomic physicist who failed atomic physics. That's
Yep.
what he was.
Don't laugh.
Too bad he didn't know transcripts. Stick around so we can.
He didn't have the internet back then.
Here's the thing: like Scientology today says that like all this is a conspiracy and to like
Written by who?
no. I mean, like
Look,
the colleges were against him and all.
I don't think I've said this in other podcasts, hence our sign. Occam's razor. Simplest explanation is normally the correct one.
Yeah.
Normally, the one better yet, the one with the least amount of workarounds, and there seems to be a lot of workarounds with just whatever
yeah.
this is.
It's a lot. He was failing so many classes that he was placed on academic probation in 1931. This was 1 year after beginning university studies. So basically, sophomore.
Well, I don't know. It's a dumb question. You wouldn't know. I was like, doesn't he just not read? He doesn't study. He writes, but he doesn't read.
I don't think he just he probably just didn't study.
The only author of all time that never reads but only writes.
He received a warning in the spring of 1932 after showing little to no improvement after being put on academic probation. But regardless of his plummeting grades, he organized the Glider Club on campus. The Glider Club. Gliders. Okay. And he was even elected as its president by the other members of this club. He was...
The only member.
No, there are other people.
Also, like glider. Like glider, like we get on the glider and we jump off things.
Glider.
Not like glider. No. Not like that. Glider.
Glider.
How readily available were gliders in the 30s? Is this like a thing that was like
I
big,
don't
and then
understand.
just died off? Extra, glider surplus.
He was...
1 penny per glider.
He was an oddball, but
Yeah, that's one way to say
he began writing contributions to that school newspaper as well. It was called the University Hatchet.
Eeh.
So he was writing
Sounds like
for
a
the high school
horror film.
and then he was writing for the college. And in June of 1932, Hubbard arranged a trip to the Caribbean to, quote, film pirate strongholds and collect whatever one collects for museums.
Guys, listeners,
That was his mission
viewers,
statement.
Let this be a record. Let this be a record statement from History Out of the Box. You think these things are still in major existence and not, ruins when you don't listen to your history teacher. Pirate strongholds in the 30s?
Yes, the Caribbean.
Did he think that, mermaids were real too?
That's a good question. He might have. I don't know.
What?
I mean, he had a lot of interesting beliefs, so...
Carry on. Okay. Proceed.
The ship that he rented ran low on funds, and they returned to its origin in Baltimore, Maryland, instead of completing whatever he was trying to accomplish in the Caribbean. We don't know. He was looking for things for museums. Didn't find any because he ran out of money. So he went back. He went back to Baltimore on his ship that he rented because he had no money because he didn't find the medallion from the Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
He didn't find the crown jewel from Titanic.
Nope. He looked. He didn't realize that the Titanic went down south of Greenland. He went down to the Caribbean looking.
In order to discover these things, Mr. Hubbard, you need to be able to dive under the water. You're not going to see it most of the time from the top.
Mm-hmm. I don't know the details of his.
This might be my favorite episode so far. Honestly, this reads like a toddler. Like this Jenny, your notes are phenomenal.
Oh,
but these notes and the way everything's written, I almost think I'm reading a YA novel, a young adult novel.
Here's the thing. It's very obvious.
But it's history.
Throughout his life, he wanted to be like Sir Ferdinand Magellan. You know, he wanted to be like a big explorer. However, to be an explorer in today's world, you're either exploring, the forest behind your house with a cape on, or you are a billionaire who has nothing better to do than throw money at expeditions that don't do anything.
Are you saying he was the Jeff Bezos where he goes up into space and he's
no.
Yeah!
He had that attitude without any of the money.
What does he say when he came out with the cowboy hat? He was like,
he says, hell yes!
Hell yeah!
With that meme.
He did that kind of laugh.
If anyone doesn't know what we're talking about.
It's a meme. There was when he went up in space, didn't he? He went up in space and he came.
Hat.
Yeah, he, as one does in Next Frontier. I get where he's going with that.
I'm just saying, like,
such a peculiar.
This was the 1930s.
Hot take. Jeff Bezos looks like a sickly pit bull. Hot take.
Oh my god.
Anyway,
so he failed.
Yeah,
he didn't find any
failed
treasure.
The school.
He didn't
failed. Pirate Excursion 101. History Excursion 101.
He didn't find any treasure or museum items.
No,
pirate strongholds, none to be found. It seemed to greatly affect him, this failure, because he didn't return to school afterwards. He gave up on school.
I'm crying.
He couldn't face his peers after his pirate excursion didn't go well. It was not a good time for him.
I'm literally crying.
But you know what,
Dad?
It's about the adventure you have along the way, right?
So my pirating excursion didn't work out too well. This has destroyed me.
Didn't go back to school.
I don't understand.
Instead,
at
the behest of his father, Hubbard joined the Red Cross relief effort and traveled to Puerto Rico. Or he was supposed to, but midway he abandoned his Red Cross team and joined a mineral surveyor, hoping to strike gold. He abandoned the Red Cross mission to go dig for gold in a mining camp, basically. He was really determined. He had that like adventurer spirit, you know?
I know the type of person. I've met
You've
people.
met people like this,
I have
right?
met people that are similar. Mm-hmm. I've met people like this. And look, to each their own. It's
Listen,
okay.
they're not on this level. They're not this extreme. I have an adventurous spirit. Like, I too wish.
Look.
I wish I could go just dig for gold.
Look.
Unfortunately.
It's one thing. It's one thing to get like rent a boat and go do something like that, or to like actually join like the Red Cross, or actually to do a mineral surveying thing, actually do that. Mm-hmm. It's another thing entirely to do all those things, and your reasoning, your sole reasoning, I want to strike gold.
Yeah.
That is in 1930s. Look, possible. Gold is everywhere, kind of. Not really.
I mean, strike gold, strike minerals.
Was he born like maybe a few generations too late? You think so? You think this might be this might be like, if simulation theory is a thing and we all like, or if better yet, if the cast, like if reincarnation is a thing, right? Reincarnation is a thing. Say it's a thing, right? And it's actually real. Maybe he just got mixed up. His name got mixed up in the lineup. He
should have been one of these guys who was at the California Gold Rush.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
Making the name
like
for
he
themselves.
was literally born maybe two generations too late.
Hundreds of years before on a boat from Europe.
His thetan got confused.
Murdering everyone in Central America with syphilis. That's where he should have been.
his thetan.
Squaring off with Montezuma in the Aztec Empire.
I will tell you right now, he would not have made it. He would have gotten like, what was the thing when they don't have enough fruit and they lose their mind, go crazy?
Oh, not sepsis. Scurvy.
He would have got scurvy. He would have been the scurvy boy. They would have sang of Lil Lafayette Hubbard. They would have sang of him on the boats. There would have been like pirate shanties about him, about tales of woe against scurvy. With that being said, I think his thetan got confused, missed a generational, just
came
took
out
the
of
wrong
the volcano
directions.
at the wrong time.
The way I am, well, here's the thing: is I think they missed something. I think the volcanoes in between them have like what kind of amounts to like the London Tube, which is just a giant train system. He just got confused. He got on one train
again. If you want to go watch a Scientology.
Got on one train.
Episode,
and just
go to a different podcast.
He missed it. Just went right past where he's supposed to get off. Like, whatever the Harry Potter 9 3/4. He skipped that pillar and went by it and hit an actual pillar, knocked himself out, woke up later. His entrance was closed and boom, just found L. Ron Hubbard.
We'll get into all the Scientology stuff later, at least from L. Ron Hubbard's perspective. If you are truly interested, go watch the Leah Remini stuff.
Yeah. If you're actually interested in whatever this is, not this, Scientology. Of course you're interested in this. Subscribe. Or follow us on Instagram or listen to our podcast or send us mail. If you're actually interested, go do that. Believe it or not, failed all these things. Couldn't be a pirate.
He was
very
trying
sad.
to find very sad.
Locations. Very sad. Couldn't be a pirate. Couldn't be a college graduate. Very sad. Couldn't be a celebrated physicist. Very sad. Couldn't be a gold prospector. Very sad. Got married. He actually got married
3 times. So this is just the first
His
time.
success rate in convincing the opposite sex.
Oh, yeah. More than 3 times. But yes, 3 times he got married. This is his first. We're going to talk about his first wife.
Okay, well, I'm bringing it back. I'm reeling it back. The chronic silliness syndrome. I'm reeling it back. We are starting anew. New cam. Go ahead.
All right, good. He returned to Washington, D.C. in February of 1933.
Didn't strike gold.
No gold. No minerals either. And no pirate strongholds.
Didn't find any minerals.
Not
a single mineral.
He was hitting the ground and he found nothing. But
Just why do I imagine him using like a pool?
I don't know. It was a mineral surveyor. I don't know exactly what he was doing.
They survey minerals.
He didn't come back full of riches, if that's what you're asking. Nothing. Right. He met a fellow glider pilot. Okay. Her name was Margaret Grubb. She went by Polly. Okay. Polly. So Polly. They were quickly married. What? Glider pilots?
Just go. Just this entire thing just reminds me of a Calvin and Hobbes comic.
Hubbard and Polly were married very quickly. He met her in February of 1933, and they were married in April.
Dear God.
April 13th, 1933, they were married, likely because she was already pregnant. Sadly, she suffered a miscarriage shortly after the wedding, but she was quickly pregnant again, and on May 7th of 1934, they became parents to a premature little boy that they named Lafayette Ronald Hubbard Jr., after his father, of course, and his nickname would be Nibs. Yes, and they had a second child shortly thereafter as well, named Catherine May on January 15th, 1936.
Why in the world would they ruin their son's name, but give their daughter a normal name?
I don't know. I think he changed his name later on in life, but we'll get to that.
Oh, great. He changed his name, or his son did. Oh, okay.
The son.
Okay.
When he's adult.
Okay. I thought you meant like Hubbard original
No.
number one changed his name, because that'd be kind of a douchey thing to do. Name your kid after yourself and then change your first name.
No.
What a douchey thing to do.
At the time of both of these births, they were living in Laytonsville, Maryland, and they were very poor. Money was a very common issue in their household, and Hubbard had begun writing short stories for magazines and was a growing name on the short story magazine scene, which I'm sure wasn't exactly poppin', but he was well known in those circles, and it didn't pay well, even when the prices were commercially published, or the pieces, were commercially published. And the going rate for freelancers was 1 cent per word at the time. So after 6 pieces were published between 1932 and 1933, he had made about $100 in total. That's 1930s money, but yes, still not a lot. And today it's like $2,000, $2,100 about. For 6 pieces. Published over 2 years. He got $2,000. In today's money. $100 in that money. He was slowly gaining traction, though, and a pulp magazine called Thrilling Adventures, which sounds about right. Adventures. Thrilling Adventures. They published his short story in 1934 and then began to take more of his work over the rest of the decade. Hubbard had many pen names that he used, including Winchester Remington Colt.
Where did he get that name? You think he might be a fan of firearms?
Kurt von Reichen and Rene Lafayette.
I need to think of some names.
Joe Blitz.
I happen to have a Winchester, a Remington, and a Colt.
I think my favorite pen name he used was Legionnaire 148. I think that's a good mysterious one.
I'm wrong. I'm incorrect.
About what?
His thetan didn't get lost. His thetan found him at the right point in time.
And said, this is
in
it.
the right period of time in which he could have existed. I changed my mind. My perception on Hubbard has changed. He's a genius.
Might change again.
Probably.
He wrote a wide variety of genres for these short stories, including sci-fi, mysteries, adventure fiction, westerns. He even wrote romance, which is hilarious.
Why do I feel like he's like when he kisses people? Why do I feel like he? Yeah, I know. Why? Yeah. Why do I feel like he's an open eye? Why do I feel like he's one of those where
That's horrifying.
He just
Ugh.
I feel like that was kind of his thing.
Who knows?
I'm getting a really weird vibe from this guy. Like if he showed up
It's gonna get weirder.
If he showed up my front door, I wouldn't let him in the house.
Well, here's the thing. You might have, because we'll talk about it. He was a charismatic dude.
Charisma, sometimes, if you don't have a lot of experience with it, with yourself, but with it yourself, can overpower strangeness. But sometimes, when you know when you know what to look for, the weirdness overpowers the charisma.
In 1936, Hubbard, his wife, and his 2 children picked up and moved
Dear God.
to Bremerton, Washington, to live with his aunts and grandmother. And after finding some footing, because they had no money, remember, they moved into their own place nearby in South Colby, Washington, and money was still very tight, but they did sustain themselves solely on Hubbard's income as a writer, which is astounding. But they were very poor. Very poor.
This is the 30s.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're very poor, but you could still... Well, actually, it's a Great Depression, so... Never mind.
In 1937, Hubbard's first full-length novel, Buckskin Brigades, was published, and he then wrote the script for The Secret of Treasure Island, a 1938 Columbia Pictures movie. He was seeing success now and spending much of his time visiting New York City, and rightly, his wife suspected he was carrying out affairs while he was away. Shocker. A man away from his wife and family having moderate success cheating on her. I've never heard of that happen before.
Rephrase. A celebrity having moderate success being a narcissist. I'm getting the stinky poopy smell of narcissism from this guy. Not being faithful. That is not surprising. There's not a lot of examples today. I mean, it's a guy from that one band,
Maroon 5.
Madam Devine or whatever his name is.
Oh,
Adam DeLine.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah, he was faithful. So
Of course.
makes sense. I love his text messages.
Don't need to repeat them here.
I'm not going to.
So let's talk about his life-changing experience that sparked most of what he did for the
Did
rest
this
of his
happen
life.
when he was panning for gold, or when he went on his pirate excursion, or when he was studying to be an astrophysicist and working with nuclear material or nuclear weapons?
No, this was at a dentist office
Oh,
in 1938, April of 1938.
they showed him the bill.
That was a life-changing experience for me last time I was at the dentist, too. No, he claims that he went to a dentist office and he had to undergo a procedure and was administered drugs to, be put under. And while drugged and in the procedure, Hubbard claims that he had a near-death experience where he, quote, died for 8 minutes, which inspired a manuscript that he never published, but he wrote, titled The One Command, or Excalibur was another name for it. He claimed he sat at a typewriter for 6 days after this and 6 nights in stillness until he was suddenly imparted with the great message because of this 8-minute death experience
So,
during the procedure.
fun fact, and I could be wrong about this, I am not a doctor.
Okay.
Not a doctor.
Neither am I.
I normally think that people who die for 8 minutes have to be perceived by others to have died in order to be considered deceased. Isn't that normally what death would entail from an observational standpoint? Because I could say I slept last night and died for 10 minutes, and then I awoke. And there's no way of verifying that whatsoever, even if you're watching me.
Well,
So,
he said,
do you think he might have had a bout of brain damage after this procedure?
or maybe before. I don't know.
Stop it. Okay, well, interesting.
Yeah. He stated that, well, it's stated by all who read it, including Hubbard, who wrote it, obviously, that this was the birth of Dianetics, which we will talk about, his famous start of Scientology.
I get
Dianetics
the
was a
name
book.
now because he died and
I didn't think about that.
Dianetics. I get where he's coming from.
This manuscript he wrote after this procedure in the dentist office that changed his life and gave him the one true message or whatever was the birth of that. And later, the foundation of Scientology, it focused heavily on the psychology of a lynch mob, apparently, according to someone who's read it. Not very many people have actually read this
A
one.
lynch mob?
Yeah.
Like a group of individuals who go around lynching.
Hubbard said that this manuscript was going to, quote, change everything. It was more impactful than the Bible, according to him. Like, it was going to be that impactful of a book.
How many copies of Dianetics were sold?
I don't remember. We'll talk about it.
How many
A lot.
copies
It's a
of the
cult
Bible
classic.
have been sold?
It hasn't quite reached that level.
It hasn't
yet.
caught on yet. Yeah.
But
well,
he
if we
wrote...
keep on TikToking, it's sure about to.
Maybe.
Are they on? Oh my God, are they on TikTok?
I'm sure they are. I bet you they are. Ooh, don't want. If you get that in your algorithm, you're never going to get rid of it. But it focused heavily on the psychology of a lynch mob, like I said, and like that sounds
I
really
don't even know
biblical.
what that means. I have no idea what that means.
But anyway, he wrote to several book publishers insisting that they meet him at, he said Penn Station was where he wanted to meet these people and discuss the book with them. And whoever gave him like the highest bid, he was going to sell the manuscript.
Great pitch.
No one took him up on his offer to buy Excalibur.
Oh, of course they wouldn't.
His dentist office near-death experience, the message. No one wanted to buy it.
Here's a message for our viewers and listeners. If you have a crazy enough idea, you can lie your way to success.
It's true. He was depressed. He was upset. No one wanted Excalibur.
Poor little Hubbly Bubbly.
He wrote to his wife about his woes after the book failed to gain any traction.
Dear wife, who I have cheated on multiple times, I'm writing to you to let you know that this has depressed me, my failure. Not with my marriage or
I need to cheat
with
on you
everything
again to
else.
make
I
it
must
feel
cheat
better.
on you again to make everything better.
That's not what he said.
Tell the kids that I'll be cheating on you at a specific time, so they dare not write me at that time or send me a letter there so it doesn't arrive.
What he really wrote was this.
I feel like he speaks, like when he was around, I feel like he spoke in Old English.
No.
He strikes me as someone.
This is what he said.
Sooner or later, Excalibur will be published. Sorry, it got Gandalf there for a second.
And I may have a chance to get some name recognition out of it to pave the way to articles and
Doesn't he actually sound really strange? Doesn't he have like a really weird voice?
I think so. I don't remember.
Yeah, well, and comments, which are
my ideas of writing heaven, foolishly perhaps, but determined nonetheless. I have high hopes of smashing my name into history so violently that it will take legendary form, even if all books are destroyed.
Interesting. It's in the 30s. Wow, he predicted the future in Germany.
The goal is the real goal as far as I'm concerned.
I do think he actually spoke like this, like Sean Connery, if I remember correctly. I have seen footage of him. He sounds like a wet shoe.
Well, here we are talking about him, so I guess he did make some sort of mark. Hubbard was obsessed, okay? He told his literary agent that those who read it would either commit suicide or go insane.
So why sell it?
Interesting, right?
Why this? Mm-hmm. You know the movie The Ring? Mm-hmm. I feel like they got their idea from this.
He was, I don't know. He told a story about how he walked into a New York publishing office and showed the manuscript. The publisher read it, threw it on the table, and threw himself out of the skyscraper's window after reading his manuscript, which, okay, sure, Jan. I'm sure that's exactly what happened. There was no recorded real event of this, but this was his story, and he was sticking to it.
You know what? The internet's ruined everything. The internet and cameras.
Really has.
The internet and cameras ruined everything. It's made life boring. People in that time didn't lock their doors. They just left pies on windowsills. They trusted their fellow neighbors.
This was pre
And people like
serial killer documentaries.
people like L. Ron Hubbard, who likely would be serial killers in the 70s.
He lived into the 70s.
Well, if he was born at that time, well, or probably in the 50s, they just did whatever they wanted to. Here's the thing, here. This is now becoming one of my favorite episodes, and I said this before, but I will say it again. I think he figured it out. He figured out how to break out of the Matrix. You just lie about everything, and do what you want.
Well, the manuscript later becomes a major piece of Scientology mythology, right? In the early 1950s, the church offered signed copies for $1,500 a piece, which would be about $17,000 today. And those who bought it were sworn to secrecy. They could
Because they all killed
say,
themselves, or they went crazy.
They couldn't say what it was about.
I have a very honest question here, and I don't mean it with any vitriol.
Sure, but okay.
Can they just not connect the dots? Is there just no, like, a crossword puzzle is just not a thing with these people? Like, have they not gone through mazes?
I don't want to even... So this is just my personal opinion.
Are they bullied into it? Is that what it is?
I think there's a lot of...
Because, they're given large sums of money.
Well...
Like, large.
No, I think that things like this, in my personal opinion, take advantage of people, and it's people like Hubbard who are mass manipulators, and they know exactly what to say and do to get a certain type of person into whatever they want and sort of roundabout coerce them into following them, doing what they say, giving them money.
No, I understand.
This is not a new thing.
No, I know it's not.
This is just a different name on thousands of different things
Well,
that
we
are
could
still...
talk about all the cult leaders. Well, let's not. Like, we need to go to someone like serious next time. This is a little too silly.
Well,
for
bottom
my
line
taste.
is I understand like this. We've been making jokes, but like I feel for a lot of people who fall into sort of cults like this? Obviously, like there's a certain point where you're like, your
they
behaviors are your
fall
fault.
into it though? I mean, like,
Well,
look,
some people are born into it.
okay, that I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about people who are walking down the street and someone walks up to you and says, "Do you want to hear the story of L. Ron Hubbard?" And they say yes, and then they walk in and they end up paying hundreds of thousands of dollars without hearing. Maybe they didn't hear that this guy said about his own manuscript that anyone who reads it will either kill themselves or go crazy. No in between.
There's more to this than that. That's not... You're jumping ahead like 50 steps.
The guy he gave the manuscript to jumped out of a skyscraper's building. If someone who came to me and said, "This is something I've written," and every person I've given it to has either killed themselves or gone crazy, you know what I would do? I'd smile. I'd say, "No, thanks." And I'd leave.
Well, yeah. He was an oddball, like I said.
That's, understatement of the century.
In February of 1940, Hubbard joined the Explorers Club, again on brand for him.
This guy is the most on-brand individual I've ever heard of.
He earned admissions based on his claimed explorations of the Caribbean.
Again, he figured out the Matrix.
And in July of 1940, he launched an Alaskan radio experimental expedition on a ketch called Magician with his wife. And they didn't get any further than Ketchikan.
How old was he at this time?
1940. He was born in 1911. So,
how did he avoid the draft? How did he avoid the draft? He's in his 30s.
1940? 1940, the draft was...
In the early 40s.
Well, I don't know.
Like, wasn't D-Day 42?
Well, we're not... You're jumping ahead again. He does go into the military.
Okay.
He does go into the military.
Fine, sorry.
Stop jumping ahead. Oh my gosh.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm all thrown off now.
Well,
the magician catch in Alaska. Where is he now? He's moved 100,000 times already. This is why I was like, he's moved so many times.
Processing.
Okay.
Beep boop, beep boop, beep boop, beep boop, beep
Yes.
boop, beep boop. Where is L. Ron Hubbard now?
He's in Ketchikan with his wife on a broken boat.
In space.
Alaska.
He's in space with alien robot cyborg hybrids.
Okay.
On deep space.
So his expedition, the Alaskan Radio Experimental Expedition, they launched, and 2 days later, the boat broke. The engine broke. So the problem here was that they didn't have money to repair it. So... But to his credit,
Oh my God.
for some time, he then settled in Ketchikan, and he worked on short stories to the local newspaper in Ketchikan, and eventually earned enough money to fix the engine a few months later. And they were back on their expedition. They made it to the Puget Sound in December of that year. The Alaskan Radio
I wouldn't
Experimental...
trust this guy to go down the street to get my mail. He's had more, and this may be, and here's the positive from this, the silver lining here. This guy has more failures to his name than successes, and was still wildly successful. I do not fault him for starting the world's largest religious cult that there is, and I don't fault him for that. That lots of moolah in that area. I don't fault him. It's fantastic when you start a religion cult, and it's really good that he was able to do that. But I've just never witnessed, outside of the original Chad, maybe not. No, this guy surpasses the original Chad.
You haven't even heard a fraction.
Yeah,
of it
no,
yet.
the original Chad, George Washington, had a lot of failures. This guy, thank God, he didn't discover politics.
You know what's interesting?
Thank God.
He did, dude. We're not
Oh
even...
my
You keep jumping
God.
ahead.
This guy's like freaking Machiavelli.
I told you he lived a lot of life. I told you.
He's lived multiple. Maybe he's right.
Uh-oh. That's all happening.
Man comes to Scientology in middle of podcast.
So let's get to the military stuff.
Well,
since
we should probably take a break.
Oh, sure. Let's take a break.
And we're back. I have decided to dunk my head underwater, ice frigid water, in order to relieve myself of this fever dream that is an actual person who lived and existed, maybe. I mean, he sounds like he's in the Tales of Lore now.
He existed.
This is written by Tolkien.
You know where we used to live in California? There at the mall, the actual, like, you know, the cement blocks in the parking lot? They were all built by L. Ron Hubbard Construction Company. Isn't that interesting? I remember that was etched into the side of them, and I was like,
We're doomed. We're doomed.
Well, his military career wasn't doomed. Remember, he tried to get in a couple times and didn't work out? Well, after the Alaska excursion, Hubbard tried to get into the Navy for a third time. He had friends in high places this time, including Washington State Representative Robert McDonald Ford, who actually wrote him a stellar letter of recommendation. And later, Ford actually said that Hubbard wrote the letter himself. He had only provided the letterhead. And he said, "Hubbard, you're the writer. You write it yourself." And the letter was hysterical. I didn't put it in the notes, but it said something like, "The best man I've ever known, of the most highest character, blah, blah, blah." Well, Hubbard wrote it to the Navy as a letter of recommendation for himself. But he had the letterhead of the Washington State Representative, and that's all that really matters in the end, isn't it? Networking. But Hubbard began as a lieutenant junior grade in the Naval Reserve on July 19th, 1941.
Oh my God. Dude, how do we have cars? How do we have electricity?
You're going to love some of this. That's coming up.
How is it that we have achieved flight? Because, look, if you can lie about almost everything and get to any position of power, including lieutenant, in the military during World War II. There are thin threads. Thin threads. Yeah. You can't even see them.
He was in the Naval Reserve, okay? And he soon began training to be an intelligence officer in New York, but he was then posted to Manila, Philippines.
Because they realized he was racist and didn't have a lot of intelligence.
By December of that year. And he was sent to Melbourne, Australia, to await his transport to Manila. However, he never made it there. The Navy sent him back to the United States, and their reason was this.
Thank God. Someone in the Navy had a brain. Someone in the Navy. This is why we quote-unquote won. This is why we were able to quote-unquote be victorious in some areas. Because this man didn't make his way into the Navy in any serious fashion. Oh
yes,
my
he did.
God.
You stopped jumping ahead.
I just...
Okay. Do you want to know the reason why they sent him back? Do you?
I don't know.
Okay.
This seems literally like an episode out of a really bad sitcom.
This is the reason why the Navy sent him home. This officer is not satisfactory for independent duty assignment. He is garrulous, something, and tries to give impressions of his importance. He also seems to think he has unusual ability in most lines. These characteristics indicate that he will require close supervision for satisfactory performance of any intelligence duty. That was in his naval records when he got sent back from being stationed in the Philippines.
It's the military in the naval intelligence community doing this.
Well,
good joke.
We needed a lot of men in the military then, because back at the mainland, he was desperate to get out to sea, and eventually his request was approved. He was sent to Neponset. Thank you.
Neponset.
There you go. Massachusetts. He was sent to Massachusetts to assist in converting a trawler into a gunboat at a shipyard. And in September of 1942, the Boston Navy Yard remarked in his file that Hubbard was, quote, not temperamentally fitted for independent command, and he was relieved shortly thereafter on October 1st of the same year. That was a full month.
Thank God.
Wait.
That boat actually operated correctly.
Well.
They avoided catastrophe. Oh, my God.
In 1943, Hubbard underwent submarine chaser training, posted in Portland, Oregon, on the submarine chaser called the USS PC-815. And on May 18th, the submarine chaser was set off to San Diego, California with Hubbard in command.
Of course, yeah. That would make sense. Makes sense. That fits, totally fits. Back to San Diego, back to California, makes total sense.
Well,
that 100% fits. It fits.
5 hours
Puzzle piece.
into this journey from Portland, Oregon to San Diego, Hubbard claimed he detected an enemy submarine in proximity, launching the crew into what turned out to be a 68-hour combat mission with what turned out to be a known magnetic deposit in the area. And they were forced to turn around by their upper, chain of command. And they never even made it to San Diego because they had a 68-hour standoff with what could essentially be like a log in the ocean. It was a known magnetic deposit, but some people say it was like a full-blown log because it was an enemy submarine.
I'm at a loss. I'm at a loss for words.
Well, we're still not done because shortly...
If there was a definition... the antithesis to competence, his face, should be next to it in the dictionary.
It went further than that because Hubbard was still manning that submarine chaser.
Oh my God.
Into Mexico's waters, and he held gunnery practice off of Coronado Islands. He said he thought they were the United States property, but they weren't. Mexico's property. They were not pleased. They complained to the U.S. Navy, and Hubbard was immediately relieved of duty again. And in his report, his higher-ups recommended that he be assigned, quote, duty on a large vessel where he can be properly supervised.
No! Send him away!
No, they needed
No, they did not. They didn't. Did not. No. Return to sender.
Yeah.
This is a faulty bolt here.
Well.
This is the gunnery practice.
Mm-hmm. In Mexico waters.
Coronado, you're just going to start shooting guns.
Yeah.
Guys, this man, lest he be called that, founded a religion that has followers. Supposedly to them 3.5 million.
Yeah, no. Mm-mm. So, Hubbard was sick.
In the head?
Maybe. I can't clarify that. I can't confirm. But after being relieved of command of that submarine chaser PC-815, he was reporting stomach ulcers, back pains, other ailments, all to the San Diego Naval Hospital.
How do you know that you have stomach ulcers? How do you know?
Excalibur cam.
Oh, of course. I wonder if he looked at his own butt area to check if there was any poopy after he wiped.
He was under observation for 3 months at one point in the San Diego Naval Hospital. Isn't that like crazy? 3 months.
Everything about this individual's existence is crazy. Everything.
He later wrote in private after, all this. The stomach trouble you used as an excuse to keep the Navy from punishing you, you are free of the Navy. So again, just like the eyesight thing, he was using it as an excuse.
I'm making a conscious medical diagnosis. This man is neurotic. He's neurotic. He had some sort of psychopathy and probably had brain damage.
It sounds to me like he had a problem with authority, but he loved being like a sailor, so he wanted to go into the Navy to like explore, but the Navy's not about finding pirate strongholds. It's about, very strict chain of command and stuff, and it sounds like he just couldn't do it unless he was top. That's what it sounds like.
Or he was on the spectrum of some sort.
Well, that's all speculation. We don't know of any mental illnesses diagnosed or not.
He had gunnery practice at an unknown set of islands to him without checking with the military. He 100% had something going on. If it was a low IQ, that might be it, or some sort of brain damage or spectrum of some sort. That's my final analysis.
The hospitalization, the 3-month one in San Diego, didn't last much further than that. He was actually sent back to Portland, Oregon, and he was appointed as the navigation and training officer on board of the USS Algol.
I don't understand.
Is
the Navy at this point in time, prior to being serious?
Wasn't serious in the 40s?
Not really. We kind of had to win quote unquote win. We had to be prolific in World War II in order to get any semblance of seriousness. You have to remember the United States did not spend a lot of money on military prior to the World War II. And then afterwards, we just decided to say, let's put all of our money into it, which was a good play. But they really just let anybody off the street.
Well,
just anyone.
He didn't seem to love it there, because at his request, he was actually transferred then to the School of Military Government in Princeton.
What the actual?
And he departed for Princeton. Hubbard reported an act of sabotage the night before he left on deck of the USS Algol. He said that he saw a Molotov cocktail concealed on board. Authorities reported an investigation was started, but no makeshift device seems to have been found. So that was just like one last hurrah, maybe. I don't know. But after attending further school in Princeton, he was assigned to Monterey, California, in January of 1945. And he was back in the Oak Knoll Naval Hospital by April, complaining of conjunctivitis, pains in his side, stomach aches, hemorrhoids, just you freaking name it. By October, a naval board found him physically capable of performing duty ashore. And he was discharged on December 4th, 1945 from the hospital and put in inactive duty in February of 1946.
He was honorably discharged.
No. Discharged from the hospital and put in inactive duty in the Navy Reserves in 1946. Yeah. By 1950, after the success of Dianetics, which we'll talk about later, that was his book that really drew a lot of the early fame, he would officially resign commission from the Navy after that in 1950. That was his Navy career.
This guy, I just don't. This is now stressing me out.
This is stressing
me out. He went to Princeton.
Well, he went to the School of Military Government. Well, yeah, I guess.
Did he graduate?
I don't know if he graduated, but he did attend further school there.
Okay.
I mean, just to get into Princeton.
If I was the quote unquote owner, whatever that would be, school board director, in that individual, after knowing about all this right now, went there, I'd shut the school down. I'd retire the school. The school would retire indefinitely. No more Princeton. That's what I would do.
Well, are you ready to talk about some of the fun stuff?
Let's do it.
Like that wasn't fun.
That was a roller coaster of emotional trauma is what that was. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the weird stuff that Lil Hubby was into outside of diddling himself and women that were not his wife. Occult
involvement is what he was into.
Of course he was.
After the war, Hubbard's life was spiraling. Shocker. According to him, his family abandoned him as a useless cripple and a burden.
Oh, right. That's what it was.
But his daughter, Catherine, says her mother just refused to uproot her children from Washington because he wanted to move to California and she didn't want to move herself and the children there. So
smart.
The marriage wasn't too happy, obviously. But August of 1945, Hubbard picked up and moved to Pasadena, California. I'm very familiar with Pasadena. There, he shacked up in a mansion owned by John Whiteside Parsons, also known as Jack, a rocket propulsion researcher at the California Institute of Technology. And Hubbard befriended Parsons soon began sleeping with Parsons' young girlfriend, named Sarah Northup, otherwise known as Betty. So there's Hubbard, there's John Parsons, and his girlfriend, Sarah Northup, and Hubbard moved in and started sleeping with the 20-year-old girlfriend of his roommate immediately. But here's the thing. Parsons wasn't just an academic, a rocket propulsion scientist. He led a double life as what was called a Thelemite, a follower of the English ceremonial magician Aleister Crowley. Have you heard of Aleister Crowley before?
I have heard of Aleister Crowley.
That's a whole other thing. Maybe we'll attempt that one day. I don't know. But yeah.
Ozzy Osbourne? Mr. Crowley?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But anyway, Thelemite, which is a follower of Aleister Crowley. Parsons only rented rooms in his mansion in Pasadena, California, to those who were, quote, atheists and of a bohemian disposition.
So, okay.
Yes. And that's very Los Angeles, if I do say so myself. As someone who spent a lot of her life in Los Angeles, it seems right about on brand. There's a lot of a lot in Los Angeles, which means if there's a lot of a lot, you get a lot of everything. So
that was the most nonsensical sentence I've ever heard in my entire life.
To me.
It made sense to Hubbard.
Parsons knew Hubbard was sleeping with his 21-year-old, not 20-year-old, sorry. Like, it makes much of a difference. But his 21-year-old girlfriend, Sarah, Parsons knew that Hubbard was sleeping with her. But he still had a lot of nice things to say about Hubbard. Here was what he said.
Hubbard is a gentleman. He has red hair, green eyes, is honest and intelligent, and we have become great friends. He moved in with me about 2 months ago, and for some reason I'm Russian. And although Betty and I are still friendly, she has transferred her sexual affection to Ron. Although he has no formal training in magic, M-A-G-I-C-K, he has extraordinary experience and understanding in the field. From some of his experiences, I deduced that he is in direct touch with some higher intelligence, possibly his guardian angel. But if you're an atheist, you don't believe in that. He describes his angel as a beautiful, winged woman with red hair whom he calls the Empress, and he has guided him through his life and saved him many times. He is the most thelematic person I have ever met and is in complete accord with our own principles. And I am named Parsons.
Yes, that was
and
Parsons.
I am a moron.
That's what he thought about Hubbard, at least at first.
This guy's a cuck.
I mean,
He's a cuck.
by definition.
By definition, he is a cuck.
Well,
go ahead.
Hubbard and Parsons were great pals.
Of course they were.
They collaborated on a sex magic ritual.
The listener advised discretion.
Yes. Yes. I'm sorry.
We didn't do any of that, but that's okay. Whatever.
Whoops. It intended to summon an incarnation of Babylon, one of their goddesses, and the ritual was called Babylon Working.
This is,
again,
a group of atheists.
Listener discretion advised. I'm about to describe in a short way what exactly this ritual was. Not too graphic, but Parsons used his, quote, magic wand to whip up a vortex of energy so that the elemental would be summoned. What that means in real words is...
Parsons diddled himself in the name of spiritual advancement, whilst Hubbard, with his technological skills, scanned the astral plane for signs and visions. You know, just good old straight guy stuff.
Essentially, it sounds like Parsons would masturbate.
I was trying to avoid that
Hubbard.
word, but now we are the explicit territory, which I will mark on Spotify and the associated platforms.
Yeah. I mean, that's the actual term.
You know what this makes me think? Honestly, this makes me think? A lot of things have made me think this over the last few years. But this specifically makes me think. There's no such thing as education. It's a made-up term. Doesn't mean anything. People who study certain things probably don't know anything about what they're studying. And if they do know a lot about what they're studying, they probably don't know a lot about anything else. And people who are, quote unquote, in this context, atheists somehow can also not be atheists in any sense. So thus maybe atheism could also, to some people, be a made-up term. Just very strange. Very strange.
Well, it wasn't just the sex magic.
We're already there. Just say it.
Parsons, Hubbard, and that girlfriend named Sarah, they developed what was called allied Allied Enterprises, a business partnership between the three of them. They invested nearly every dollar they each had into a scheme where Sarah and Hubbard would buy Miami yachts and sail them to the west coast of California for a profit. At least that was the original plan.
This guy has more bad luck with boats than anybody I've ever read about.
There's more to come.
He has a negative.
But is this bad
boats,
luck? You're jumping ahead again.
Boats detest him.
You're jumping ahead again.
Okay, fine. I get it. He discovered the North Pole.
No North Pole. Unfortunately, that would have been exciting. No, Hubbard instead sought permission from the Navy to visit China, the South, and Central Americas with Sarah, instead of going to the West Coast like he agreed with his business partner. And it just so happens the vast majority of that investment was from Parsons. You know, that rich guy from
was
the West
I
Coast.
right about my? I'm Parsons, and I'm unfortunately not very bright.
Well, Parsons freaked. He tried to file an injunction to prevent the two of them from fleeing the country or dumping the remainder of the assets, all those yachts. They tried to leave regardless, but a storm forced them back to shore. So they didn't get to actually do what he was planning.
Someone needs to make a movie about this guy. And you know who needs to be L. Ron Hubbard?
Who?
Nicolas Cage.
No, they're too wound up in Hollywood.
No. He's not. He's not.
No, not Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage needs to play L. Ron Hubbard. And they need to do an actual movie on this guy. It would be the funniest movie
Scientology has too much of control over Hollywood still.
I don't think so.
Tom Cruise.
He's not the...
John Travolta.
Okay. You said A-list actor and then someone who was A-list in the 70s.
Okay.
Just saying.
Well, Parsons was upset, obviously. And when they couldn't get away because of the storm, Allied Enterprises soon dissolved. Parsons only got back $2,900 of a promissory note, and he was totally swindled by Hubbard and forced to sell his Pasadena mansion because he was so broke after this. But what about Hubbard and Sarah? What happened to them? Well, they are now living on a yacht in Florida, and many are starting to see Hubbard for what he was, a con man. Sarah and Hubbard got married. He married Parsons' girlfriend on August 10th, 1946. And he was still married, by the way, to his first wife, Polly, who's still hanging out in Washington, has no idea this is all going on, the sex magic and the yachts and the second sister wife. Hubbard signed the divorce papers in June of 1947 when she did find out and flipped her lid, and he gave her custody of the children without any fuss. Dad of the year. But, yeah. Are you shocked? Not really.
There's nothing about this man that could be said from this point forward that will shock me in any way. Nothing at all. That fits right in.
He was writing what was called affirmations at the time, a document he seems to be preparing as a sort of hypnosis tool on himself.
On himself?
Yes, he would say this. This was his hypnosis manual. Do you want to read it, or do you want me to read it?
Your eyes are getting progressively better. They became bad when you used them as an excuse to escape the Naval Academy. You have no reason to keep them bad. The stomach trouble you used as an excuse to keep the Navy from punishing you. You are free of the Navy. Your hip is a pose. You have a sound hip. It never hurts. Your shoulder never hurts. Your foot was an alibi. The injury is no longer needed. You can tell all the romantic tales you wish, but you know which ones were lies. You have enough real experience to make anecdotes forever. Stick to your true adventures.
One more. Come on. One more.
Masturbation does not injure or make insane. Your parents were an error. Everyone masturbates.
You know what I just realized? When I was writing this, I didn't quite compute it. Your foot was an alibi. The injury is no longer needed. What is
He has
that
brain
about?
damage.
No. Alibi for what? His foot is no longer injured because it was his alibi that it was injured. What is the alibi for?
Did he murder someone?
I don't know.
No.
So.
What did he? Obviously, he conned people and was a fraud in all
I just
senses
don't know.
of the word.
I mean, I guess I could.
You
dig
don't
a little
normally
further into
use alibi in general language. Normally, I don't normally use alibi unless I'm not trying to incriminate myself. So
I don't know. I'm not sure. I just thought that was interesting. So yeah, those were
that
his
would fit right.
affirmations.
That would fit right in. I would not be surprised
Well, Florida,
if like a mass swath of unsolved murders that we originally thought were George Washington strangulation murders specifically. If a mass swath of them were actually done by L. Ron Hubbard because he had discovered the key to time travel through his thetan, which got confused while trying to get to platform 9 3/4 in J.K. Rowling's Wizarding World, Harry Potter, TM, trademark, copyright. We're not trying to take that. Just saying.
Yeah.
Would not be surprised. Maybe he's the antagonist of all of history. Maybe George Washington actually went back in time to fight him.
I think that's the story we need. That's the short story we need.
Nicolas Cage needs to play this movie. That needs to be the background. George Washington, played by Hugh Jackman. Nicolas Cage, played by L. Ron Hubbard. Nicolas Cage is the antagonist. Hugh Jackman, obviously, is the protagonist. They fight throughout time, and they specifically focus on the time that L. Ron Hubbard is alive. Turns out L. Ron Hubbard is actually a thetan reincarnation of Satan.
Okay.
Boom.
You could write that. Get us $100 selling it to a...
I'm going to call it Dianetics.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Florida wasn't forever, it seems. This man moved around more than anyone I've ever heard of, like I was saying earlier. Him and Sarah relocated to Laguna Beach, California, Why? One of the most beautiful and cost-prohibitive place in Southern California. Of course, at the time, you could just move there on a whim.
It was $5 with a gum wrapper, and all you had to do was say that you were a really famous astrophysicist, and they give you the house for free.
Well, he was writing fiction works and working on a friend's yacht there.
That was his job?
Yeah, that was his job. Working on a friend's yacht in Laguna Beach. He would write. He had like a place that he was working, quote, in North Hollywood, and he would write there in his trailer. And it was a piece of crap, but it was like his office, right? I have an office in North Hollywood. Anyone who's been in North Hollywood knows that's not that impressive, but whatever. He definitely depended on his parents at this point for money because they were just so poor. And in October of 1947, he actually requested psychiatric treatment from the Veterans Administration. And this was his letter to the VA. Oh.
After trying and failing for 2 years to regain my equilibrium in civil life, I am utterly unable to approach anything like my own competence. My last physician, who realized I was a frog, informed me that I might be very helpful if I were to be examined and perhaps treated psychiatrically or even by a psychoanalyst. Toward the end of my service, I avoided, out of my pride, any mental examinations, hoping that time would balance a mind which I had every reason to suppose was seriously affected. I cannot account for nor rise above long periods of moroseness and suicidal inclinations, and have newly come to realize that I must first triumph above this before I can hope to rehabilitate myself at all. I cannot myself afford such a treatment. Would you please help me? Signed, Kermit J. Frog.
L. Ron Hubbard.
Miss Piggy left me. Give me money, please.
Money probably.
I'm thinking about selling my legs.
I just think it's interesting that he wrote for psychiatric help from the VA at this point. He didn't do it again.
He 100%, 1,000,000% probably was dropped on his head as a kid. I'm sorry, he fell down too many flights of stairs face first. Head first into a short, shallow pond when he was thinking it was a pool. The guy clearly was not stable in almost every sense of the term.
Well,
and because there was no tech back then, and people just bought houses for gum wrappers, and, you know, we were past trading cattle for wives, but we were at the point of where you could just buy a house for, you know, a stick of gum and, I don't know, a high five. They didn't know about any of this stuff.
Well, money problems did continue, and even the pension increased, and it was still a problem. The money just wasn't enough, and he was actually arrested in San Luis Obispo on August 31st, 1945 for petty theft, and he was ordered to pay a $25 fine. So things are really going well.
$25. He got arrested for petty theft, and he paid $25.
I don't know what that is in 2022 money, but yeah. And honestly, we could keep going, but there's a lot left. So we're going to cut it here and do part 2.
I need an emotional...
then it gets real crazy.
I need an emotional break from this nonsense. This is my favorite episode so far because it is literally like reading a young adult fiction novel, like one that's like the first from the author, where it's like it got published because it's just imaginative enough, but the writing's not too good. Not the notes, just the general story. It's just all over the place. This is like watching an M. Night Shyamalan movie. It's just all over the place. There's no rhyme or reason. He's an omnipotent. He's in 47 places all at once. He's married to 39 people. He's
there's Navy. There's
he's
sex
a doctor.
Magic. There's pirate strongholds.
He's
Navy.
every occupation under the sun is his occupation. I mean, this is clearly.
You know what this reminds me of?
This reminds me.
No, Kim Jong-un. Right? Like being born under a double rainbow on like tuna sandwich or something, whatever he says.
He was not born under a double rainbow. It was a triple rainbow. And it wasn't a tuna sandwich. It was a Reuben Club, which doesn't exist. Well, maybe it does. Riding a unicorn made out of bubblegum. I honestly... His thetan wasn't confused at all. His thetan knew what it was doing.
Well, that's what Scientologists would agree with you there.
They're also, as Mr. Parsons. Can I broad stroke this? They might all be just a little short of a sharp side. They might not be the sharpest tools.
Oh, I'm sorry to all of our Scientologist listeners today.
They don't have technology. They don't.
They're all
they have a censored form
taking
of internet.
Notes right now.
They don't. Yeah, they have abacuses.
So what we're gonna cut that short. There's a lot more left, guys. So stay tuned for the next episode coming soon. It is going to be part 2 of Mr. Lafayette Ronald Hubbard.
Yeah, if you liked what you watched or if you liked what you listened to, go ahead and give us a follow on Instagram. We're on all the major listening platforms. Also, give us a subscription on YouTube, and I'm pretty sure.
Or give us a rate on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, 5-star review would be much appreciated. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and we're going to have for the first time ever in HOTB history, a second episode on someone.
George Washington was 2 episodes.
The second time ever in HOTB history, a second episode on someone. Yeah.
Remember, we're not even at the juiciest parts
My
yet.
brain's melting. Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye.